How's it going, folks? I've been using the Canon R5 C for about 5 months now, and while I love this camera, there are several accessories that I find make the experience that much better for my workflow. So in this video, I wanted to share some of my favorite accessories for the Canon R5 C. Check it out. So my first favorite accessory for the R5 C is the RF 24-70 f2.8. And while I love prime lenses because they kind of force you to be creative or to think outside the box a little bit, you cannot deny the versatility of this lens when combined with the R5 C. And that's in full frame mode, but you can also switch over to Super 35 crop mode or Super 16 crop mode. And those open up a whole variety of different recording formats, resolutions, and of course, focal lengths. And this chart really illustrates the sheer versatility of this lens. So you basically get a 24 to 210 millimeter lens when factoring in those crop factors. Obviously, the resolution will change as well though. Now, here's another reason why I love this lens. It is stabilized, and because the R5 C doesn't have IBIS, this is a very big deal, so keep that in mind. And of course, the lens itself is relatively fast, f2.8 aperture across the focal length range, and it produces great looking images in my opinion. So yeah, this is a must-have for the R5 C. Now, another accessory you should definitely consider if you have a lot of EF glass is the drop-in filter mount adapter. So not only will this adapter allow you to connect all of your legacy EF glass, which can save you tons of money, but it also has the ND drop-in filter in the middle that rests right here. So this is a variable ND, great for shooting in bright conditions, and as you can see, the filter just slides out like that. And again, this being a variable ND, you can adjust it to block out more or less light. And again, this is very handy if you're shooting in bright conditions and you want to keep your lens fairly wide open. Well, this will allow you to do that without blowing out the highlights. So this is a very cool little accessory here. And again, on one side, you have the RF mount that connects to your R5 C. And then on the other side, you have your EF mount where you can mount your legacy EF glass. Super cool accessory. Now, one of the downsides of the R5 C when compared to other cinema cameras like the Canon C70 is that it lacks any sort of XLR input for high quality professional audio. But that's where this little guy comes in, the Tascam CA-XLR2d-C. This is an adapter that, as you can see, looks like something you would see on a traditional cinema camera with all the switches and knobs for managing audio. But you'll notice this right here, you can actually power this device via a pair of AA batteries, or you can power it directly from the camera using this hot shoe interface. And this is something that the Canon R5 C has, the Canon R7 has, the Canon R3 has. This hot shoe accessory, basically sort of like Sony's, where you can power a device directly from the hot shoe. You may not want to do that though, because the R5 C has notoriously bad battery life, but it is a nice option. So as you can see, it just mounts right on the hot shoe and you're good to go. Now you have high quality professional audio inputs, so you can use it with a shotgun mic. I actually use it with my mixer. I go from the line out from my mixer directly into these XLRs for direct audio from my mixer, which is super handy. Definitely an accessory you should consider. And then we have something really interesting, the WFT R10A. This looks like a battery grip, right? But this actually is a wireless adapter that allows you to have network access on the video side of the R5 C. So on the photo side, it has built-in network connectivity already in the camera for wireless connectivity. But if you want that same connectivity on the video side, you need this adapter. So this guy goes to the battery slot, and then you have a little pin adapter that connects to your camera as well, and just screws into the bottom of your camera like a traditional battery grip. And you see the little pins that line up with your camera as you screw it in. But here's the thing, you pull this out, you'll see the little battery sled. But here's the difference. This part right here, this battery, is only for the wireless and network functionality, whereas the battery on the left side is for the camera. So you get no extra battery life out of this grip because one of those batteries is dedicated to the wireless functionality alone and has no bearing on the camera itself, which is super weird in a way. And yeah, so it makes it kind of awkward because It's basically like you just have one battery in the camera like normal, except now you have this add-on that gives you wireless and, as you can see here, wired network connectivity on the R5 C. So on one hand, it's a very disappointing device because it's just awkward, it's large, and it doesn't extend battery life at all for your camera. But on the other hand, you now have wireless connectivity, you now have wired connectivity on the video side. So that can be very handy for studio setups especially. So you can see it just mounts like this, you screw it on, and then once it locks into place, you're good to go. It's very bulky now, as you can see, but you do have some extra grips if you want to shoot in vertical mode. But the downside, there is no sort of, quarter 20 mount on either side. So it's going to be a little awkward for anything but still photos. But I find this accessory can be very handy if you're in a studio setup. Granted, you could still power this camera via USB. You could still power it via DC couplers and things like that if you want to. So the battery issue, depending on your setup, doesn't necessarily have to be a big deal. And the cool thing is this gives you browser control, remote browser control via a web browser to have access to advanced control. So you can control the aperture, you can control the ISO, you can even change the tracking or change the focal points, as you can see here, right there on the fly with just a click. And that is super handy if you're in like a talking head setup and you want to showcase a product. Well, this allows you to quickly do that switch between face tracking and product tracking just like that, and it's super handy. But again, your experience may vary depending on your workflow and your setup. For me, in the studio environment, I find it very handy to be able to control the camera remotely just like that without having to get up and physically touch it. But again, for your setup, that may differ. Now, a couple of more accessories I wanted to briefly mention. I want to talk about media because this camera can take both CF Express cards, Type B cards, and SD card. So I like the Angelbird 2TB AV Pro card. I find this is a nice sweet spot for this camera as far as record times and of course the types of formats that you can record, frame rates, etc. So you can see a really good look at what this offers, this 2TB card. With 8K 60, you're getting a little over 100 minutes. You can see 8K RAW, 30 frames per second, over 200 minutes. And here's the real standout one, 8K HEVC 30 frames per second with a 2TB card, a whopping 500 minutes of record time. But again, the R5 C has a dual slot setup, so you have an SD card slot as well. You can use this to record proxies, of course, but you can also use it to record full-on 8K HEVC if you want to, 31 minutes with a 128GB card, and you can even record RAW directly to that SD card in Super 35 6K mode for 30 minutes. And obviously there are bigger SD cards out there, but for the most part, you're probably going to want to use that SD card for proxy recording. So to round up, the R5 C, great camera, but with the right accessories, you can supercharge your workflow and make this camera much more capable. Let me know what you think in the comments. This is Jeff with Cellular.